What's up, War Room? Welcome back. Taking a quick deep breath from free agency. Recording this right after we reacted to the Jets signing Justin Fields and Brandon Stevens. If there's further signings between that dropping and this dropping, we'll have them covered in other pods. But we're going to use this time to talk a little NFL draft and answer some of your Discord questions, and a good time to kind of think about what's happened in early free agency and if that sort of impacts anything. CR, we got to start because we haven't had a chance to talk about this yet. What the hell happened with the Jets just jumping like 20 spots in the NFL draft out of nowhere? And have you ever seen anything like this in your career? Because I'm still wrapping my head around it.
No, I haven't. You got to realize like the amount of mock drafts Trevor and I do, and we go beyond the first round. So I start to get it's like a weird thing to not brag about. It's almost embarrassing, but you start to really remember the pick numbers for teams in the second and third round at times, especially when you talk about the fan, like when you talk to media. I mean, like the Jets, right? Like you're like, oh, I think at pick 42, you just get so used to it. So with the Jets, it felt so baked in that they only had the Lions pick that they acquired a year ago and that they traded their own. And I think what might have tripped people up was the fact that there was conditions in that trade. So maybe you're assuming, hey, the conditions are tied to our own pick. But I mean, this was totally glossed over, and it's not like one group of people missed it. This was picked up by Mike Garafolo of NFL, like the NFL Network, works for the league and is an insider for the league in March, right? This wasn't even during the trade or after the season. Like this is March. It took the other pick being traded for Geno, where if that didn't happen, you almost wonder, would the Jets have just gotten on the clock on day 2 of the draft and everyone's looking around like, oh, the Jets moved up back to their original slot. And it's like, no, they always had it. So it's very weird. I guess, part of the issue with this is too, because everybody, I saw people tweeting, well, it can't be. It's on Tankathon. And I'm like, You got to realize all these websites just are, stating what they know from reporters. There's no official database from the league. Now, the teams often, the month of the draft, they'll tweet out like, here are our picks, and it's a nice, clean format graphic. The Jets do this every year. It's really helpful. And it'll be like 7, 42, and on and on and on. But they don't do that this early of the year. They do that in April. So we would have found out eventually, but it is wildly late. And the real trickle effect of it is that every website was wrong. None of the reporters had this. And it is a big difference. It is. Everyone's asking me there, like, how big? And I'm like, this is a huge difference. The value on the trade chart I use, which is a little bit more updated than the original trade chart made, is about a mid to early 4th round pick. The difference in picks.
Wild. Yeah.
That's a huge asset, especially in a draft that isn't that great to begin with, where like there's going to be some starters there in the top 75. I don't know if those guys make it closer to 100. So, and there's a certain player that it becomes even more relevant for. So we're going to get into all that today.
So you're someone who've done multiple mock drafts, not just for round 1, but into round 2, into round 3, into round 4. What was the type of player or prospect that you were regularly mocking to the Jets that you are now going to stop? And who is the new type of player that you're going to be mocking to the Jets? And so fans can now start like circling around, like these 3 to 4 names are going to make more sense in this slot than I previously thought they had. Because I'd have to imagine it's kind of like a bit of a different collection of players at this point, potentially also at different positions.
Right. I think it opens the door to me in 3 to 4 areas that become really interesting, right? Because our thought was pick 92 was the original slot. And now you go up to 73. And you look at the names we talk about at 7 all the time, and even a day into free agency here, were Tyler Warren at tight end, Armand Membou at right tackle, Mason Graham at defensive tackle. At this point of free agency, but like there's not a lot the Jets could do. Trade, yes, not in free agency where I'd go, oh, like that guy's not in play anymore. And then you look at, pick 42, which we've talked about much more often. that can be a conversation of, I know people have brought up Dart and a quarterback, and I don't think the Jets need to take a quarterback at 42 when they have Fields and Tyrod on this roster. And
Yeah.
however you feel about Jordan Travis, it doesn't mean I don't think they're going to take a quarterback in the draft, just at 42, where 42 and 73 go a little hand in hand. Because if you went with one of the three, like if you went with Warren and tight end's not in play, then you're looking at it and going, okay, we need a defensive tackle up front in this draft with one of those two picks. Like at 73, I could see Shamar Turner from Texas A&M being a guy that they look at, or Alfred Collins from Texas, or maybe this is a little early, but even like a Jamari Caldwell from Oregon, a nose tackle. And you look at 42, and this goes in hand for 73, wide receiver becomes really interesting. I've thought for a long time the wide receiver run in this class could start at 42 with the Jets. And then you look at the Cowboys at 44, the Falcons at 46, the Cardinals at 47, the Seahawks at 50. Like all those teams could take a wide receiver. So 42, Jaden Higgins from Iowa State, big outside wide receiver. And then the most interesting one to me is 73 is a realistic range for Jalen Milroe, the quarterback from Alabama, where I don't know if he would have made it to 92. I think Milroe will be a third-round pick when all is said and done. I think everybody's aware, maybe even him included, that you need to sit for a year or more. But now you sit there and go, man, say like hypothetically, the Jets took Membu at 7 or Warren, and then at 42, they took one of the top defensive tackles. So now they feel better about their trenches and on both sides of the ball.
Yep.
And they're sitting there at 73, at 72, at 73, and they're like, okay, we like Jalen Milroe a lot. We want to stash him for a while. We could do this at 73 because we got two starters with our first two picks, where everybody was looking at those picks and going like, man, you got to get two starters, so you can't take that quarterback. Before they sign Fields, everybody's like, oh, man, maybe they could move up and get Dart. And it's like, you want to do that? And then your team's looking really incomplete. So I think it opens the door where there's a little bit of you could solve multiple starting spots and still get a very raw developmental quarterback with that third-round pick. I think when you're picking at the back end of the third round in this draft, that would be really tough. I don't think it's as tough when you're picking at the top of the third round.
Yeah, I mean, look, the Milroe conversation is going to be an interesting one, and I think you'll hear his name thrown around more a little bit now, just because the style of offense the Jets are probably going to play this year, and it's like, is this a great way for him to kind of learn? Because he's a year away from being a year away, as you've been saying, where if you can be smart and strategic with your first two picks and get starters, which the Jets are going to need to do when you look at how free agency is shaking out so far. And again, we're recording this, Monday night. The Jets, have only recorded, only signed a couple players, and it remains to be seen, like how many other like guaranteed starters that they're going to be able to add. So you don't just need a starter at 7, you need a starter in round 2 as well. Underdog Fantasy, we're back for year 2. Our first best ball draft, pre-draft, is going live this month. CR, we're back in your favorite thing when it comes to Underdog. We get the same promo code. Are you ready to fire up draft 1 of 15 that we will do this offseason?
I absolutely love this. The pre-draft best ball drafts, and then, of course, we'll keep them rolling all the way throughout post-draft as well. It's a ton of fun. We get everybody in the Discord involved. So glad it's that time of year again.
Look out for the link. First one coming here in March. And remember to use promo code Badlands for a deposit match for all first-time depositors. Now, a question that we got in the Discord that I think we'll get frequently going forward is what we've seen so far in free agency. If you had to guess right now, how do you roughly see the top 6 picks breaking out? And then what are those sort of like main options that it's likely to leave the Jets with? We've had enough moves now where, there's probably some movement to what your expectations were on 1 through 6. We're not going to hold this to you as a final mock, but what do you roughly think in 1 through 6 as of, March 11th?
Right. You could at least try to do the math of who's going to go in front of the Jets. You don't even have to try to land the spots. Cam Ward and Abdul Carter and Travis Hunter are going to go. Like, that's as easy as that. I would imagine Cam Ward is the number 1 pick in the draft. And things are looking worse by the day for the New York Giants, who might have to trade into that slot. Although the Titans, I don't know what their answer is. Like we've
Zach
seen
Wilson and Mac Jones.
Yeah, I mean, really. So, yay. So when you factor in that 3 of the 6 picks are Cam Ward, Abdul Carter, and Travis Hunter with a bullet, okay, I need to find 3 more slots. I still think Mason Graham is going to go in that group. He could be there for the Jets, but he could go. Man, I think teams like Genty a lot. I think they really do, and I think the Raiders like Genty a lot. And I think when you look at the Raiders and go, man, Geno Smith, Brock Bowers, and Ashton Genty, that's a lot of fun, man. Like that's a lot of fun in a draft that isn't very fun. You've now gone back-to-back years of maybe getting the best offensive player in the draft each time. And I know that's, maybe rich to say about Bowers right now, but in terms of, who could do the most at their specific position. So let's say Genty and Graham. I'm not convinced Shador goes in the top 6 anymore. I'm not. I think there's a lot of
we're starting to get the would you take him in the second round, which look, I think that's not going to happen. It is off the board anyway. I don't think the Jets are in the Coach Prime business is all.
I don't think so either. Yeah. The Coach Prime business is a good way of putting it. So we need one more player. I mean, you try to kind of gravitate towards the freaks. I think Will Campbell or Membu could be in play for New England at 4 just because their line still stinks, right? Like Morgan Moses is going to be their right tackle. They need an answer at left tackle. So if New England was sitting there at 4 and say Hunter was already gone, would they take one of the offensive linemen? Probably. So yeah, that's kind of how I look at it, which, I mean, at the end of the day, it's the Jets at 7 are going to have an option to get their right tackle of the future with Membu, one of the best players in the draft in Warren at tight end. These are both areas of need. Or if Graham fell, one of the best defensive players in the draft. It's and maybe I'm off here. Like, sure, there's a world where the Jets just surprise us and they take Jalen Walker or, Shamar Stewart, Kenneth Grant. I kind of shiver thinking of Michael Williams at 7, but like that world exists. But to me, when you apply logic, it's very narrow for the Jets at 7. Now that Fields is here, where you go like, okay, and people are probably like, what about Tet McMillan? Feels like the league's cooled on Tet. I like him a lot, but I just think the league has cooled a little on him. So at 7, I mean, I'm kind of in the business of thinking it's Graham, Warren, or Membu until it's not.
That feels... I've been steadfast on having Graham as my guy at 7. I just wonder more and more if he's going to be gone. I still think if he's there, the Jets take him, but it feels like it's Graham or Warren for me. That's where my head is kind of going to, although I want to see how they handle right tackle the rest of the way. Do they get any type of
right
bridge?
Now.
Yeah. Do they get any type of veteran bridge they feel good about? And if it's still a gaping hole, are we again back into a spot where the Jets have to take an offensive lineman in round 1? And look, they could get a very good player who could start on day 1, and then you're young and talented at all 5 spots across the board. There are certainly worse situations to be in. And my guess is it's going to start becoming a very popular mock pick for them. So, in some ways, maybe a 3 or 4 horse race.
Let me throw some.